Welcome to PrakPlays. Today we're continuing the German assault at La Fière. This is a scenario from the wargaming book Fireball Forward. I'm playing the scenario with 4 friends. 2 control the Americans and 2 control the Germans. I act as the game master. The players submit their orders to me and I implement them on the tabletop. I'll be narrating the scenario with my wife. We've already played turns 1 and 2 off video. In those turns, the Germans attempted to move down the causeway toward the bridge, with their ultimate objective being to seize at least one farm building on the opposite side of the river. The Germans have tried to expand their assault by moving off the causeway and into the flooded fields, only to be driven back onto the causeway by heavy American fire from the farmhouses and on the hill overlooking the river. On the American side, turns 1 and 2 focus solely on giving and receiving fire.
At the end of turn 2, the Americans played their ace card, revealing their 57mm anti-tank gun and firing it at the leading German tank. Unfortunately for them, it missed, but so did the return fire from the tank. For this reason, turn 3 is said to be a drag-out fight as the German tanks try to cross the bridge into the teeth of American fire.
The game works by drawing activation cards, and the Americans pull the first card and activate Lieutenant Graham's platoon. Lieutenant Graham's platoon consists of 2 American rifle squads. One squad is located on the second floor of the farmhouse closest to the river. The second squad is held in reserve in a barn. After a separate American squad fell back from the stone wall next to the bridge during turn 2, Lieutenant Graham has decided that now is the time to bring up the reserves to plug the gap in his line. Therefore, the Americans' first move is to activate the reserve rifle squad and move it up to the stone wall. As the buildings in the wall block line of sight, the Germans are unable to contest the move. The American rifle squad attempts to fire at the Germans once they reach the wall, but the German tanks across the bridge block line of sight to any German infantry. Lieutenant Graham then activates his second squad in the farmhouse to fire down on the causeway filled with Germans, but Lieutenant Graham's men simply cannot get a good shot through the thick hedges that line the causeway, and their fire misses.
The next activation card also goes to the Americans, who decide to activate their 57mm anti-tank gun. Importantly, this gun can only fire with the use of an initiative chip. The Americans only have 2 chips in this scenario and already used one last turn. Therefore, the Americans' decision to use the chip now means that the gun will only be able to fire for the remainder of this turn. But with the German tanks about to cross the bridge, it is now or never for the Americans.
The American decision to expend their last initiative chip turns out to be an excellent choice. In the second turn, Corporal Brenner's anti-tank crew got nervous and fired their first shot wildly, completely missing the leading German tank. Calmed this time by the appearance of Lieutenant Taylor and knowing they must hit the tank before it fires again, the crew takes careful aim and fires. The shot rips down the hill, across the bridge, and straight through the front armor of the outdated tank. The tank's turret erupts into the air, and smoke and flames billow from its hull. The leading German tank is destroyed just before the bridge.
Amazingly, the Americans keep pulling activation cards. At this point, however, there is not much for the remaining American units to do. Captain Jackson's men near the bridge cannot see any Germans through the smoke, terrain, and remaining tanks. Likewise, Lieutenant Taylor's men can see no Germans from their position on the hill. As a result, the Americans end their turn.
As all American units have now activated, the initiative swings to the Germans, who may activate each of their units one after the other. The Germans, staggered by the loss of their leading tank, decide that the best course of action is to try to eliminate some of the American positions before crossing the bridge. To do so, the Germans first activate their off-board machine gun to target the 57mm anti-tank gun on the hill. Despite heavy fire from the machine gun, it fails to land any hits on the well-dug-in anti-tank gun.
The Germans then activate C.F. Berg's platoon, which consists of 3 German squads. In turn 2, the Germans try to expand their advance by ordering a different platoon into the marshes. Unfortunately, that platoon found itself bogged down in the open, and American fire quickly pushed the platoon back onto the causeway.
Knowing the marshes mean death for his men, Z.F. Berg tries a different approach. Instead of ordering his men into the marshes, he orders them forward, around the tanks and into the hedgerow cover on either side of the river, hoping to engage the American positions from cover. Once again, however, The German movement draws heavy opportunity fire from the Americans on the hill, in the farmhouses, and from behind the stone wall. Two of Zeeberg's squads are forced back behind the tanks by the heavy fire. Only one squad manages to work its way into the hedgerows and fires at the anti-tank gun emplacement. But the fire is not enough, and the anti-tank gun is unfazed.
Running out of options, the Germans decide the only way to prevent the attack from stalling is to push forward. The Germans activate the remaining tanks and order them across the bridge. The Germans started the game with 3 outdated French tanks that had been forced into German service, one H-39 and 2 R-35s. The H-39 was previously knocked out by the American anti-tank gun, leaving only the R-35s remaining. Both tanks begin their slow crawl toward the bridge.
As the first tank makes its way onto the bridge, past the burning hull of the H-39, it begins to traverse its turret to engage the American anti-tank gun, but it's too slow. The American gun fires again with devastating results. The first R-35 is destroyed on the bridge. Undaunted, the second tank makes its way onto the bridge using the burned-out hulls of its former comrades as cover. This time, the Americans are the unlucky ones. It seems that the American gunners have a hard time spotting the final tank behind the flames and smoke of the other destroyed vehicles. When the tank emerges from behind the burning R-35, the Americans fire, but miss. In response, the tank unleashes a high explosive shell at the American position, blowing apart the anti-tank gun and its crew.
Sensing the opportunity, KTF Fry activates his platoon consisting of another 3 German squads. KTF Fry orders a general advance on the bridge. As his men approach the burnout tanks, they follow the last remaining tank onto the bridge, dodging American opportunity fire from all directions. But their movement is exhausted as they reach the bridge, and the resolution of the action will have to wait until turn 4.
Thanks for watching this episode of PrakPlays. We'll be back with Turn 4 as soon as we can.